So I want to move to Mendandi. He he went to visit Trump, honey.
Yeah, well, I'm not surprised at what happened. Mamdani was running the game on the people of New York, the youngsters who didn't know how things worked. And he was promising a number of things to get elected that he can't do in the position as mayor. A lot of what he was talking about would have to either be done by the city council, board of aldermen, or the
Governor.
state legislative body, not even the governor. When you're talking about privatizing all of the grocery stores, and you're not privatizing when you're talking about
State run or city run grocery
taking the
store.
city taking over the grocery industry and the transportation industry, so there is no fee to support something that is dependent for its existence on the fares that are charged, then you need a bit more than what a mayor can do or a governor. You need the town council, so to speak, and you need the state legislative body to do this. And then there's a matter of eminent domain and taking of private property and the requirement for compensation. So all of this sounded good, but as I've said, you can't do it. So when Donald Trump had a conversation with him, perhaps they discovered that there was some commonality about what they wanted to do
Mhm.
at the bottom level.
So I want to play a couple of clips from that meeting, and then have you comment, and then I want to play the clip from him being on Meet the Press because she was really drilling him on these sanctuary cities and the illegals. So let's start with
Sanctuary cities,
yeah. So
Title 8, Section 1324 makes sanctuary cities illegal. And anyone that aids, abets, counsels, procures, gives assistance to, advocates, or gives a general helping hand to setting up a sanctuary city commits a felony. And it's been that way for many decades.
all right. So let me play this clip.
New York. Are you concerned about Jewish New Yorkers feeling welcome and safe in the city? And President Trump, you've threatened to cut off federal funding to New York City. What policies would prompt you to do that? Would that be city-run grocery stores? Would it be something else?
Well, I think if we didn't get along, whether it's cut off or just make it a little bit difficult or not give as much, we want to see, I use the term, we don't want good money going after bad. And we don't want that to happen. I don't think that's going to happen. I did say that, subject to what policies are being said. We had a meeting today that actually surprised me. He wants to see no crime. He wants to see housing being built. He wants to see rents coming down, all things that I agree with. Now, we may disagree how we get there. The rent coming down, I think one of the things I really gleaned very much today, he'd like to see him come down, ideally, by building a lot of additional housing. Yeah. That's the ultimate way. He agrees with that, and so do I. But if I read the newspapers and the stories, I don't hear that. But I heard him say it today, and I think that's a very positive step. No, I don't expect. I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. A big help, because I want New York City to be great. Look, I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, named de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
Mr. President, New York.
And here's another one.
It's called the fine art of diplomacy in politics. That's how it works. Not where you just back into a corner and say, I shall not be moved. And you sit there and you deal with intransigence based on an inflexible position that's based on being too far over on one side compared to the rest of the public. This doesn't work that way.
Hear you.
Thank you, Mr. President. You're a billionaire. You have a different address nowadays than you used to, but you used to call New York City home. Would you feel comfortable living in New York City under a Mamdani administration?
Yeah, I would. I really would. Especially after the meeting. Absolutely.
What makes you comfortable?
We agree on a lot more than I would have thought. I think I want him to do a great job, and we'll help him do a great job. You know, he may have different views, but in many ways, you know, we were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on. Tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought. And when he was put out of the race, I think quite unfairly, if you want to know the truth, many of the Bernie Sanders voters voted for me. And I felt very comfortable, frankly, in seeing that and saying that. And, you know, it just turned out to be a statistical truth. But no, I feel very comfortable. I would feel very, very comfortable being in New York, and I think much more so after the meeting. Yes, please. I hear you.
And one more.
And I spoke about it. We discussed.
What you say?
That music, you know.
I have one more, and then go to the other one.
We discussed ICE and New York City, and I spoke about how the laws that we have in New York City allow for New York City government to speak to the federal administration for about 170 serious crimes. The concerns that many New Yorkers have are around the enforcement of immigration laws on New Yorkers across the 5 boroughs, and most recently we're talking about a mother and her 2 children, how this has very little to do with what that is.
Mr. Mamdani,
What we did is we discussed crime. More than ICE per se, we discussed crime. And he doesn't want to see crime, and I don't want to see crime. And I have very little doubt that we're not going to get along on that issue. He wants to, and he said some things that were very interesting as to housing construction, and he wants to see houses go up. He wants to see a lot of houses created, a lot of apartments built, etc. And you know, we actually people would be shocked, but I want to see the same thing.
And this is the last one. This was funny.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
He don't care. I'm not the judge.
We
Trump.
need somebody like this. See, this is real. This is how the real world works. And we've been getting these posers who are doing these photo ops and these dramatized moments of non-reality. And that's not how the world works. So it's refreshing that we have somebody like this who is essentially saying our system is clogged up, our whole country is stopped up by this nonsense, so it's time to administer laxatives and enemas. And when you do that, what squirts out tends to smell very badly. So it's time for somebody to administer the X-Lax.
The enema.
Bring out the enema. Bring the bulb out.
So he's been so he went on Meet the Press on Sunday. And they've been doing some really good interviews, the journalists here, like really pushing back on these Democrats, right? And so I want to play a little bit of this. It's about 4 minutes because she was pressing him when it came to, you know, sanctuary laws, national troops in New York. And let me just say this, because I think that I think I was surprised that Mamdani went to Trump, but he's smart because you need federal funding. You can't just bypass that. And then 2, he knows how Trump is to a certain degree, to where if you didn't come kiss the ring or show respect, he probably would land national troops on the night he's supposed to be inaugurated in Times Square on New Year's Eve. But he doesn't want that. Like, you don't want to start off your term on a bad foot with the president of the United States. I don't care what party, that
Unless you're a Democrat that is in one of the other positions where they're Maxine Wastewaters or Cory Bookmans or Coonhead Crockett.
Can I just say we can't
What Malcolm say? A processed head shows a
process
processed
mind.
mind.
Yes.
Well, all of that kind of stuff there. Or Tish James, who's so happy she got a brief reprieve. And we've got Fannie down there in Atlanta with Sheriff Buttboy. So,
It's a mess. Well,
yeah, they get a brief reprieve.
so let me play this clip here.
Trump to send troops to New York City to address issues of crime and immigration. We've seen him do this in other major cities. Did you get any assurances in your meeting, Mayor-elect Mamdani, that President Trump will not send troops into New York?
I told the president that the cornerstone of an affordability agenda is public safety, and that it is critically important to me. And for all that has been said and all that has been spoken about, and the tens of millions of dollars looking to make New Yorkers fearful of that question, the truth of it is, in fact, that I'm looking forward to working with the NYPD to deliver on that. And I shared with the president that my decision to retain Police Commissioner Jessica Tisch is in large part a recognition of the fact that in her time leading the NYPD, she has driven down crime across the 5 boroughs while starting to uproot corruption that was endemic in the top echelons of that department under Mayor Adams.
And I'm going to follow up with you on your decision.
That's not going to last
But
long.
to this core question that I think so many New Yorkers
What?
That's a more diplomacy. I don't think she's going to stay in that position long.
are curious to know the answer to. What did President Trump say to you? Did he assure you he will not send troops into New York?
He told me that he cared deeply about public safety. I said I cared deeply about the same.
But did he say he wouldn't send troops?
What I told him is that what separates New York City from anywhere else in the country is we have the NYPD. And I trust the NYPD to deliver public safety. And to me, that is something that I know that they can do, that they have done, and they will continue to do under my leadership.
So he didn't rule it out in your meeting?
I made it very clear what we wanted to do was to deliver public safety and affordability, and the NYPD would be the ones to do so.
In that press conference with President Trump, a reporter asked you whether you believe that President Trump is in fact a fascist, a word that you've used in the past. You were about to answer, then President Trump sort of jumped in and he said, quote, "That's okay, you can just say yes. It's easier than explaining it." So, Mr. Mayor-elect, just to be very clear, do you think that President Trump is a fascist?
And after President Trump said that, I said yes. And
so you do.
And that's something that I've said in the past. I say it today. And I think what I appreciated about the conversation that I had with the president was that we were not shy about the places of disagreement about the politics that has brought us to this moment. And we also wanted to focus on what it could look like to deliver on a shared analysis of an affordability crisis for New Yorkers.
You've also said in the past that President Trump has engaged in a, quote, attack on our democracy. You've called him a despot. Do you still believe President Trump is a threat to the democracy?
Everything that I've said in the past, I continue to believe. And that's the thing that I think is important in our politics, is that we don't shy away from where we have disagreements, but we understand what it is that brings us to that table. Because I'm not coming into the Oval Office to make a point or make a stand. I'm coming in there to deliver for New Yorkers. And a few weeks ago, I was asked by a reporter 3 words to describe myself. I said, New York City. And that's what animated that conversation. How do we deliver for the people of New York City?
I think that some of your supporters would be curious to know. You say you stand by your past statements that, yes, he's a threat to the democracy. How do you square working with someone who you still think is a threat to the democracy?
I think working for the people of New York City demands that you work with everyone and anyone, and that you always look to find those areas of agreement while not overlooking the places of disagreement. And I think this was something that came up in our meeting. We spoke about immigration. We spoke about the fact that in New York City, we have sanctuary city policies that allow for the city to work with the federal government on around 170 serious crimes. The concern for so many New Yorkers comes about anything beyond that. And I spoke about the importance of us being able to protect New Yorkers, and some of the incidents that we see, they do not do that.
You raised the issue of sanctuary cities, so I want to speak to you more broadly about the issue of immigration. This is one that is so critical to New York, the rest of the country as well. One of your top supporters, Senator Bernie Sanders, recently weighed in on President Trump's record managing the border. He compared it to former President Biden. I want you to take a listen to what he had to say. I'll get your reaction on the other side.
Trump did a better job. I don't like Trump, but we should have a secure border, and it ain't that hard to do. Biden didn't do it. Those before him did not do it. We should have a secure border, period.
Do you agree with Senator Bernie Sanders that President Trump has done a better job securing the border than former President Biden?
I haven't thought much about comparing presidents on the question of securing the border. I think it's important that it's secure, and I also think it's important that we have an immigration system that is humane. And that's what I spoke about with the president, is that New Yorkers want to see humanity in the policies that are being implemented.
Do you give President Trump some credit for the work that he's done to make the border, in Senator Sanders' estimation, more secure?
What I give President Trump credit for is the meeting that we had yesterday was one that was focused on how we could work together for New Yorkers. And the place that we could do so most effectively, frankly, is ensuring every New Yorker can afford the city they call home.
Well, you take me to my next question, which is about really the central issue of your campaign, affordability. You have.
Okay, you know what? See, on that open border thing, New York is the site of the Twin Towers, right? Or it used to be, because there are no more Twin Towers. Why aren't there more Twin Towers? Because some terrorists did a thing back in 2001, 911, and they are gone. So rather than having to hijack aircraft now, Biden let Al Qaeda, ISIS, and Hamas, Iran, North Korea, China, People's Republic of China, and some other folk walk across the border with these backpacks full of military grade explosives. So we want to have another one of these moments where what else is going to come down in New York? Because that's everybody's favorite target. It exemplifies the United States. It's the biggest city in the United States. It is the center of economic trade and finance and the stock exchanges. And what better target for somebody who does not like the United States to go after than something in New York City? So New York City is ground zero for what's going to happen next, along with some other places. So it's really a mess that you had this stupid moron who was in there and just let the border go wide open because it was a selfish effort to ensure Democratic Party hegemony in the next several elections by stuffing the populations of various critical states with excess population that would be counted under the Article 1 provisions of the U.S. Constitution without necessarily being able to vote. So it's real crazy.
It sound like when you got in front of the man face Donald Trump in the Oval Office, right? Yeah, we agreed on a lot, and then you get in front of Meet the Press. It's like you speaking to the people that voted for you one way, and then you speak in reality to the president another way, and he's two-faced. And to me, that's not having a backbone. So I don't even wonder. I know for sure New York is never going to have a city-run grocery stores. What they may
nor free public transportation.
Exactly. It's impossible because it's expensive. They're not going to go down on the prices. They may put a freeze for a year, but if you freeze the rent, you're going to have to freeze mortgage interest for the people that own that building or the homes or whatever, because they're paying, high taxes, high mortgage rates or whatever. So here's my thing. How do you convince the American people, particularly New Yorkers, that if a politician say I'm going to make sure that you have affordability, you can live, and you don't have to pay over 40% of your paycheck. It's a lie. But people
Well,
believe
yeah,
that.
yeah. But, and you know what else is ludicrous about the whole proposition is who makes New York what it is, the biggest city in America, one of the most powerful cities in the world because of its being a center for economics, finance, banking, industry, and stuff like that. And you want to run around and say you're going to penalize these guys for doing what they do that made your city what it is? That's not going to work.
Well, I had to push back a little bit there, because that was the rumor mill. The billionaires going to leave. They haven't left yet.
No, they're not
Some of
going
them
to, but a lot of
relocated
them.
to Florida, but they relocated to Florida during COVID because they didn't want to be on lockdown. However, what the wealthy does and have done, they're the reason why, apartments and housing increase, because you have a lot of people who are making money, who are wealthy, and who are rich in New York City. But honestly, what makes New York, New York is the true melting pot. It's not so much the wealthy because they're boring. And a lot of wealthy people, rich people, or well-off people don't even weren't even born and raised in New York. They're from the outside coming in. It makes it boring. The people who were born and raised in New York make New York what New York is.
Yeah, but what would New York be about if it weren't for high finance and big
Well,
business?
no, you're right. I mean, as far Wall
Yeah,
Street, and that was since before America technically was even America. So of course that's the cornerstone, especially marketing, so yes, that's a given, definitely. So what would it
and
be without that? Yeah.
one other thing too, they keep saying Trump is anti-democracy. The United States is not and never was intended to be a democracy. It is a republic that employs the democratic process for just one thing and one thing only, and that's the selection of the leadership. The leadership is not supposed to govern democratically. They're only supposed to be elected that way. Some of them, senators, representatives in the House, and that's it. The president is selected by the equivalent of a board of directors known as the Electoral College. The judges are appointed, so only one arm of government is elected by a democratic process, and the rest of the government, the other 2/3, are not. And they don't do the democratic thing. See, a democracy would require that every time there's a piece of legislation, everybody would get to vote on it. But California tried that in the Los Angeles area where they wanted to come up with every time the city of Los Angeles came up with a contract, let's say for a new arrangement with the local utility company about supplying power to run the street lights and the stoplights, uh, how many Americans have the expertise and the wit and the patience to evaluate a 21-page detailed contract when it comes to your agreement between the city of Los Angeles and a utility company about supplying power to the city so they can operate the stoplights? They don't know how to do it. It's beyond them, and it's absolutely ridiculous to think that they would be required to or should be encouraged to think they should vote on every one of those contracts. Ain't gonna work.
So what is your conclusion, Whitman? Do you think that he's going to be more pro-Trump in his agenda or more Castro?
Well, the point is that he ran a big game on the city about what he said he was going to do that he did not have the constitutional authority to do under New York law or American law. And it was to get in. He got in, so maybe he's got some ideas and some ambition for where he wants to go. I'm thinking of London, where a recent mayor of London was Islamic. Didn't do a bad job, but he got a little ludicrous. He wanted to register kitchen knives over a certain size because in England, they tend to be used for homicides.
Yeah.
Now, when you got to register what's in your kitchen drawers that's made in China, that gets a little ludicrous.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. All that, he selling socialism, but actually implementing it, two different things.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
See, socialism itself was looked at as a solution to deal with the excesses of what they used to call laissez-faire capitalism, which meant capitalism with no restraints. And when you get to thinking socialism, you need to think about the National Socialist Workers' Party of Germany and the acronym for National Socialist Workers' Party in Deutsch, Sprachen Sie Deutsch, ja? Is Nazi. It spells Nazi. So we saw what those guys did, and we saw what their Italiano Contipate did with Mussolini, Benito. That's called fascism.
Mhm.
And between Italia and Oberdeutschland, yeah, you got one poisonous combination of socialism. And we don't need to have another National Socialist Party in the United States of America, which would be the full blown manifestation of that theme that the Democratic Party likes to get into.
Well,
And I was impressed by Bernie Sanders saying what he said.
yeah, because I would say he's probably one of very few of the Congress people that actually sometimes do talk in reality. You know what I'm saying? And with common sense. Like, listen, and the reality is the borders needs to be secure and closed. And Trump did that. You have to give someone the acknowledgement, and their props for, doing their job and doing it right, so, or correcting a wrong. But and he would do that. Like, no, I don't like him, but he did a good job at the border. And it's the truth. But that was intentional for the Democrats to have an open border. So
And by the way, when you have an open border, don't forget the cartels.
yeah,
So
cartels, the drug
drugs, gun
trafficking.
trafficking, all
Mhm.
sorts of black market affairs, gangsterism taking over neighborhoods, terrorizing the local inhabitants. All of that goes along with, and 30 going on 40 some thousand convicted sex offenders that nobody knows where they are now, up to 20,000 folk committed of various and sundry homicides. Nobody knows where they are anymore. And the street crime that is rampant and climbing like it is a moon rocket. It's very bad. So, Democrats, what are you trying to do? Say theft and death? That's supposed to be our lot so you can get your filthy way? No, that's not cool. Mm-mm.